I am super excited and very anxious to have a conversation, a medley moment with Sonia Coleman. So let's just wait one more second and then we will get started. Okay, let's get going. Well, it's been a few moments, so to speak, since I've had a conversation in the Medley Moments framework, and perhaps it was because I was just waiting for Sonia to say yes. We met about a year ago for breakfast, which turned into the turnover at the restaurant to lunch, and we began talking about our career paths, but we quickly moved into who we were as people, as humans, and what mattered to us. We've stayed in touch. We've continued to get to know each other. And I am super excited and thrilled to have Sonia join me in a medley moment where I have the huge good fortune to bring people and conversations forward so that others can be inspired and motivated and just intrigued as I was. So brief introduction on her storied career. Sonia Coleman is currently the Senior Executive Vice President and CHRO of Disney, where she has been for almost 20 years. Sonia, I think I have that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Held various HR positions throughout the incredible iconic brands of the Walt Disney Company. She joined Walt Disney from HR roles at Home Depot. And if you'd like more specific details, of course, it'll all be in her LinkedIn bio. But what I'd really like to do is to start out by asking this question, Sonia. Tell us your story as you'd like people to know it and how people experience you and your life and your career.
Yeah. Thank you, Edith. First of all, thank you and Medley for having me. And I also just want to thank you for your generosity. As you said, we met almost a year ago, and I will tell you that you have been able to impart such great insight and wisdom. You've helped me grow. You've helped me step into this role in a really meaningful way. And I'm just truly grateful to you. So thank you for that. And as I think about like my personal journey, and I think about, my career, I believe the way that I was raised really helps me think deeply just about leadership. So share a little bit about my mom. I think every conversation I always do. I was raised by a single mom, Vicky P. is what we called her. And I have two sisters. I have a twin sister, Tanya and Sabrina. And my mom just taught us like some really important values throughout our life. And, I think one of the things that she shared with us that helps me think about leadership is just hard work. Like we didn't have to be the best, but we had to give our best in everything that we did. And so I think from an early age, that was instilled in us. And any time that we're doing something, we're always thinking about how do we put our best self forward? Mm-hmm. And then, honestly, how we're representing the family. And so that was one. The other thing was just the importance of supporting each other. That means competitively and in any other environment. We played sports our entire life. As I mentioned, I have a twin sister, Tanya. So she was incredibly good. We're both, I would say, ambitious and wanted to do our best. But at any moment, we were always cheering for each other, no matter what. And even if we're on the opposite teams, we were cheering for each other. And I think that just helped instill for me just important ways about how you lead and business is about competition, and there's a friendly way to compete. And I think that my mom helped us with that. And then just kindness and acceptance. She grew up in the Jim Crow South, and my mom loved everyone. And I mean everyone. And she never judged a single person. She accepted people for who they were. And I heard the stories about her upbringing, and for her to be able to live her life that way, I think it's just so incredibly freeing. And so that's something else that I carry into leadership. And then the last thing is just really thinking about, for me, as I've stepped into bigger roles of leadership, and I think about that approach, and I think about my principles and philosophies, all of it rooted from my mom, I just think that it's our job to provide clarity. It's our job to give hope and optimism, to have kindness and care, and then also to be really solution oriented. Focus on the problem. Don't focus on blame, right? And I think that helps motivate people, or not motivate, but inspire people to do their best.
So let's stay on the last point, and I suspect we're going to get to all of the things you mentioned: clarity, kindness, acceptance, being supportive of each other, solution oriented. I recall you sharing the story of your mother saying, "You know what? It's not happening for us here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go," I believe, straight to California.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I heard in that story the solution orientation, but also her capacity to take risk for the future.
Yeah. I mean, look, my mom was so courageous. She did something that was about really thinking about our future. She left everything that she knew for 25 years. And she moved me and my sisters to California. And she
From
did
where,
that
Sonia?
from Mississippi, from Laurel, Mississippi. And she did that because at that time, she knew that we would have a better future, a better education, if we were in California. And she only knew one person in California, no one else. And, candidly, she did it against her family's wishes, because she really wanted something different, and she sacrificed everything, and she worked really hard to create a path for us. Mm-hmm. And my mom was a young mom. My mom was only 20 years older than us. And so we grew together. But as I reflect back during like milestones, we talk about risk. My mom's 30 years old. She has 10-year-old twins and an 8-year-old, and she is doing whatever she possibly can to ensure that we're in the right environment that is going to best instill in us her values, but also give us the opportunities that she never had. And that was a big risk. And we grew up in San Jose, and it was an area where we were one of the first Black families in San Jose, and in the area that we were from. And so she was an outsider, and I'm sure she had to persevere through a lot of things because of that. And it would have been easy for her to just pack up and take us back to Mississippi where it was safe, but my mom never did anything safe.
So she felt like an outsider, but it sounds like she never instilled that sense of not being positioned to achieve whatever you wanted to achieve. Did she say, you will rise to be in corporate America? Did she have an expectation that she instilled upon you and your sisters?
Yeah, I think, it wasn't really about what our career was going to be. And I think that was also just based off of the environment that she grew up in. But what she did ensure was that we worked hard at no matter what we did.
Yes.
And she made sure that we understood that we were as good as anybody else in the room, or better, and that it was all about what we put forth. So no one could choose our path for us. She was clear with us that it was what we desired. And so my mom, high school education. And I know there are many people that have a similar background, mm-hmm. and all three of us have our masters. I have to say that we do because of my twin sister, who was she just really is exceptional. And both of us were inspired by her, and we went on to further our education, and we both have our masters as well. So all three of us do, from really good schools. But that's not what my mom set off for us. She wanted us to have a fulfilled life with less struggles than she had, and she wanted us to be happy.
Yes. Yeah. So fulfilled life, less struggles, making a difference, doing the right thing, and working hard.
Oh,
and you certainly have worked hard. you began working and going to school, if I got that right, or
Yep.
working and then going to school and going to school
Yes.
at Home Depot.
Yeah.
I'm not going to insist that you go through the decades, but
Yeah.
the threads of how you decided to go into the people business at its core. I recall that you started off in talent development, and a bit about your journey through Home Depot and then consumer businesses and Disney. I think that many would benefit from your experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, lots of trial and error, to be honest, success, failure, success. And I think I found something very natural. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I found something that I enjoyed, and I found something that I could do really well. And it started off in talent development, and it was actually an accident. Like, they needed someone to do some training, and they asked me at Home Depot to do it. I worked in a store, and they said,
So you were working in a Home Depot.
I was working in a Home Depot in Northern California, and they were rolling out some new equipment, some new technology. And they said, will you do it? Do the rollout. And I loved it. And from there was some opportunity for me to further do training and development. And like you said, I started off working and then I went to school. And so for me, it was a perfect sweet spot because I knew what I wanted to further my education on. And I picked organizational leadership because I love the balance of business and understanding that. And I think I've always had like a high business acumen, but I was able to couple that with how do you lead others and how do you lead them from a place of kindness and compassion? And I didn't start there, by the way. I was exacting, I was hard, I demanded excellence, and I didn't leave room for empathy. But fortunately, I always had someone like looking over my shoulder and saying, that's not how I raised you.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't only at home, but it was influence as you started your journey through corporate America.
Yeah. Yeah. And so from there, I was in learning, and then I discovered organizational development. And I felt like I had a knack for understanding the business aspects, but then being able to apply like the human capital components of it. Like, how do we enable people to drive business and make an impact? And I've always been in HR. I've had the opportunity to do other things, but I love what I do. And I'm surrounded by people that do it really well. And I think that helps too.
So thanks so much for sharing that journey. I'm just going to take a moment and read something, and that is the mission of the Walt Disney Company.
Okay.
You know this, but I'm not sure. And I think everybody who will and listen in or is listening in now is aware of the Walt Disney Companies. But the mission of the Walt Disney Company is to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling, reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovative technologies that make ours the world's premier entertainment company.
Yeah.
What is it about that mission statement that got your attention? And why do you believe on a day-to-day basis your experiences and your employees' experiences reflect this very clear mission statement?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I actually haven't thought about it in a long time. So I would say that like, we are here to bring joy, wonder, delight, and entertainment to the world. And I felt like pride being able to say that. The impact that this brand has on from a very young age until, a very mature age. I think every person that I meet has a story about how Disney has affected them in the most positive ways. And those, like what we say is magical moments. And I feel great about working for a company that's our mission, is to entertain and to delight. And then on top of that, to be able to tell the stories of the world. You and I have talked in the past, even recently, just about the rich tapestry of the world, and to be able to tell stories that represent everyone, that are so fun and so personal and also delightful to watch. I think, again, just real pride. And we work with individuals that feel that responsibility every single day. And we work with incredible storytellers and innovators and technologists. And I think that's how it all comes to life.
And, when I think about the Disney companies, everything from the theme parks to the studio to ESPN, and the brands go on and on, I do feel that sense of worldliness. I do remember having my 13-year-old go through It's a Small World again, much despite his protests, because it just, from an early age, made me imagine what was out there that I hadn't experienced. But we are in an interesting environment that's rapidly changing, where, there are different views on the role that Disney plays in all of society. And I think that can be hard for people who care deeply about the company. Tell us how you, as a leader at Disney, keep people focused on the mission and on the guiding principles, where there may be negative things out there that are in the way.
Yeah, I think, you're absolutely right. And we really talk to the organization and people and remind them what our values are, right? Our values are collaboration, curiosity, creativity, inclusion, right? And so we are constantly talking about, how do we think about the work that we are charged to do, and using our values as a way to determine how, right? And again, we go back to the mission. We are here to entertain. We are here to bring stories to the world through our television, through our films, through our experiences. And we remind people of what we're here to do and how to do it. And it's about, again, I'll say it, representing stories of the world with no agenda, but it's great storytelling.
Great storytelling.
Yeah.
And, as I, again, think about your career path, and in our conversations, you've highlighted that you didn't sit down one day and just say, okay, I want this job and that job. But share with folks how those opportunities came up, ones that have gone well, ones that you might want to revisit, and perhaps even, were there any that you just said, no, I don't want to do that?
Yeah. Let's talk about the one I said no. So I had an opportunity to do a bigger role in my career, and I just said no. I didn't want to do it. And I think for me, success meant something different, and it didn't mean more, and it didn't mean greater responsibility. I always try to think about, what do I think I'm here to do? How am I here to serve? I think about what does the company need? And do those two things match up? And when the opportunity was presented for me, it didn't match up. And so I made the decision not to. But there were other times where I made a decision not to do something because I was afraid of taking the risk.
Oh, so tell us about that.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm actually very risk averse. I'll be very candid. I'm very risk averse. And because of that, I think there were moments that I decided not to do something because I was a little bit uncomfortable.
Yes.
Now, I had the great fortune of having an incredible mentor, Jane Parker, who tapped me on the shoulder and said, you're going to do this. And I truly am so just grateful for that moment, because
what was your role at the time, Sonia?
My role, I was working consumer products. And in her role, she was the CHRO of the Walt Disney Company.
Okay.
And I was a vice president at the time. And I was so happy at consumer products. And she said, I want you to come to corporate. And I was scared. and I was uncomfortable, and I hesitated, and she rephrased it. She goes, "Oh, you're coming to corporate." And it was candidly the best thing that ever happened to me, because it put me in a space of discomfort. I was more curious than I'd ever been, and I was supported, and it just allowed me to flourish so quickly and expand my thinking, and it gave me confidence. She did that actually twice. And I'd have to say I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if those two things didn't happen.
So now you are at the top of the company,
Yeah.
the Walt Disney companies, and you have gotten very comfortable being uncomfortable. That's something that, I've thought about and pushed myself to do over and over again. And I have to say, I am amazed at how uncomfortable I still can get in circumstances. What advice would you share to people who are right now nodding about looking around the room, wondering whether there's a common ground, questioning themselves in the organization? Clearly, you've gotten through all of that. What advice would you share?
Yeah, I would say, one, just be open. Be open to the opportunity. Be curious, right? Curiosity creates growth. And then the third thing is embrace being uncomfortable. I actually think it can fuel you. The more discomfort you feel, I actually believe that it helps you kind of shape your career and shape who you want to be as a leader. And when you're in a room and everybody is the same, I actually don't find that to be the best environment, because you get into that, you're like-minded. No one's challenging the status quo. There's no dissenting voice. And I actually think that having people that think differently and look differently, sitting around you with a different lived experience, allows us to deliver at our best. And that all turns into a successful business.
So, that's an interesting, perspective on why it is so important for everyone in the room not to be the same. In an environment like we are now, and I would say we will be always, that is changing so rapidly and transforming, whether that's due to new market entrants, shifting expectations, different, opinions on issues. How is that diversity of thought manifested in an organization's ability to make these moves? And how, as a leader, do you do that? Because that's really can be challenging.
Yeah. I think that, first of all, as a leader, I think it's important for us to ensure that we have the right people in the conversation. And this isn't about level. It's not about title or responsibility, right? It's about capability. And that is capability of thought, and also their capability of an impact, right, that someone can make. So I think it's hard, right, for the way that business moves. The pace of it is so fast. It's so important to stop for a second, understand what you're trying to solve, and then look around the room to ensure that you have the right people invited to the conversation to help you solve it. Diverse points of view. And I'm not talking about just race. I'm talking about experiences. I'm talking about socioeconomics. I think about the consumer. You want that broad thinking and representation sitting around the room, helping you solve the problems for the company. I think you get a better outcome. You also get to understand what the unintended consequences can be, right? And so, for us as a company, it's how we organize ourselves. It is how we think about how we solve problems. And it's also, again, it goes back to our values of inclusion. And I will restate, it's not just race. It's thinking, it's experience, right? And it's also having just different people sitting around you that are challenging, outcomes.
So, there's so much to unpack there that's really critically important. And it goes back to where we started, right? You were talking about clarity, being supportive, being approachable as core values that you've had. You mentioned that it's really important to surround yourself with differences broadly defined. One that really we often don't talk about, but we should, are generational differences.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm in an incredibly fascinating time because I'm working in a startup. I'm probably definitely decades further on in my journey than all of my colleagues, including my co-founder, Jordan, who is also my daughter. And I have to say, there is not a single day that goes by that I don't think, I'm so glad I had the opportunity to talk to someone who is not in my generation. Yeah. Because my generation, to be frank, is not the future. Right. The way that people are thinking now is different. And that certainly was true in my previous professional experiences. But when you're at the top of the house, like you are, you spend your day, working with your CEO, Bob Iger, your colleagues on the executive committee, the board. How do you make time to spend with the summer interns? Yeah. I saw you put a post up on the summer interns. How do you find time for that? How do you make it happen?
Well, first of all, we just get out in the market. I get out in the market. Last week, I was in Argentina and Brazil, and I was able to spend time, understand the business dynamics, meet people, and I'm just intentional about how I schedule my time and who I schedule my time with. And you're so right, generationally, and understanding, how people think about not only the brand, how do they think about how work gets done? And so back to your question, I'm just intentional about where I spend my time. And I do as much as I can to meet with people throughout the organization around the world.
And what is, okay, this is putting you on the spot here.
Okay.
What was your aha moment from your recent trip to Latin America?
How much passion. It's actually, I've been thinking a lot about it. So it's good. They are so passionate. There's such incredible leadership in the marketplace, and in Argentina and Brazil. They've got such a deep understanding of the brand and doing incredible work. But I think most importantly for me, just how they lead. And we had started talking about hope and optimism. They lead with so much optimism in how they lead that organization. And they are so compassionate, and they truly care about their people. And so those for me were the aha moments.
And, as you get ready for the march towards, year end, where, so much is coming your way, whether it's this, calendar year end, whatever it is, how do you make sure that you make time for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's about intentionality. I love to watch television. So every night I am watching.
That works out well for you.
It does. Because I also get the good stuff before it even comes out. And every night I watch something. I find time on the weekends to just be by myself, because that refuels me. Yes. And I make time for my family, my husband, Carl, my sisters. We make time to do things that we love together. And that's how I recharge.
And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you in our final minute or so, share advice, to people who aspire to be the impactful, authentic leader that you really are.
Well, thank you for that. I would say that, as a leader, you're going to have power. And you are going to determine not only outcomes, but you're going to impact people's lives. Lead with empathy, lead with compassion, lead with understanding, and really thoroughly understand the consequences of decisions that you're going to make.
Sonia Coleman, it has been a pleasure sharing this conversation with so many. I feel I was being selfish by having you all to myself. you are, and hopefully will be going forward, part of my medley. Someone who I look forward to chatting with, learning from, sharing ideas, and continuing to grow as a human. Thank you for the work that you're doing, not only for the Disney companies, but for all of the people that you have and will interact going forward. You know, words that you're sharing around empathy, caring, understanding, responsibility of leading, so important. So thank you for joining. I would suggest everyone, follow what she's up to, because it's going to be spectacular. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.